You're tuned in to the MtG Cable cast, where they cover Magic, the Gathering finance. All right? You don't know about it? You're tuned in right now and get ready to learn some shit. Buckle your seatbelts and light a blunt and get ready for the MtG Cable cast. Starring Reptar and Thirsty, them onion head motherfuckers.
Alrighty, everyone. Welcome to the newest episode of the Cabal Cast. And this week, we're going to talk about something that's pretty niche, but is relevant to the finance market for sure. And why don't you tell us what it is?
So back in January, CGC, Certified Guarantee Company, as I found out not too long ago, brought in what they thought were Pokemon test cards from the WotC era. So basically everything you would see in base. And they were all in Japanese, so it looked to come from Japan and cited with source as legitimate. They posted that they had a find unlike any other and that these cards were to be graded and then disseminated back through auction houses and sold to players and collectors alike to enable them to effectively own a piece of Pokemon history. And they went through great lengths detailing this sheet that they had found or that had been brought to them. They mentioned the either original playtester or developer of the game that they worked with, though that has since been taken down.
Yep.
And they discussed how they knew effectively that these cards were real. They grade the cards. They are sent back out. They were found at auction houses. They moved through to public hands. And in time, it was found out that they were fake, that they had been printed in 2024, basically either months or maybe a year prior to that sheet arriving at CGC. And with great length and the number of released videos, I think from the CEO, CGC brought those cards back in-house and did something with them after apologizing. We assume it's just, incinerated them effectively, just trashed them. And that left CGC in a really interesting spot for a company that basically started grading comics and eventually broke into the collectible card game world, the trading card game world, and is seen as one of the pillars of the grading community.
Yeah, it's not a great look. And I know, obviously, other grading companies, BGS comes to mind. There was that Rebec Ruby that was at Did Rudy post the video about it?
He might have, I think so.
Yeah. Not a great look for either of those companies, but this is on a much larger scale.
Yep. I think PSA also graded, I was thinking about this last night, they graded a fake Innistrad foil Snapcaster Mage when Snapcaster Mage was worth more by ounce than gold. And they graded it as authentic, and it was inauthentic. I think the person didn't know it when they sent it in, or they sent it in as a penetration test, but either way, it was found to be fake when the person received it back with an authentic tag on it. So it's not like this doesn't happen. These are humans grading these things. But be it comics or cards, humans are doing the work. We've talked about this a number of times. But to the point you just made, never really at this scale has fakes of the or counterfeit product of this magnitude been passed to a grading house and come back out as graded authentic.
Yeah, the interesting thing about this is this passed through so many hands. It went through so many people, and at the end of the day, people who bought these were able to figure it out in their home using stuff that was not niche technology. And it's just like this, if it was a penetration test, I mean, obviously I think it was, but great job. This is the important thing is and the CEO posted the video and everything. When you say you just found out the name, the word guarantee is important because one of CGC's policies, and this is actually definitely going to come into play here, is they fully financially back every card they grade.
Mm-hmm.
So if it does come back inauthentic, they will supposedly fully reimburse you for it. It'll be really interesting to see what happens with this as far as reimbursement or anything, because they've been pretty quiet.
Yes. The statement they made basically said like, hey, mea culpa, and then they gave a couple of facts. One of them is that the cards in question represent less than 0.03% of the cards graded by CGC. Cool. But financially, these cards were moving for like 4 digits at a minimum.
And there were thousands of them.
Mm-hmm. And these cards were also given preferential treatment above others. And that's something you can't buy back. You can't buy sentiment from somebody who sat there and had to wait weeks or months for whatever they sent in for grading, whatever they submitted to get graded, because in front of them in line is something like this, a lot that was entirely fake from top to bottom. And there's a lot of goodwill that kind of was lost over a number of artifacts from this, right? Because these cards were disseminated, now everybody who bought them or has come into contact with them has to run through these instructions for submitting an eligible card for review, to go through the process that you just mentioned. And then CGC will effectively determine what the outcome of that is. They will, like I said, take that card back. There's an option where they will remove it from the slab but send it back. There's an option where they will determine what the current market value for that card is and send it back and reimburse you for that. And then there was a third option. I can't remember what it is, but it basically sums up the rest of what they could possibly do. And all this can be done with no litigation.
Yeah.
Once you submit it back, you get what you get, and you waive your right to anything from there. And between the cards being found to be fake and CGC's response, all the auction houses that this went through refunded the buyers themselves. They bought back their goodwill because they were not in the know that these cards were fake. They were just given to them as graded authentic, graded by a company that has worked its way into the ecosystem of a number of other organizations and a number of other processes. So yeah, why would you re-authenticate the authentication when they're known to be a trusted company? When they're the certified guarantee company, why would you recertify with somebody else, especially when they've spent so much time trying to make themselves or make a name for themselves in trading cards?
And as far as like making a name for themselves, they had gotten so big that they are the people that eBay uses for authentication now.
Yep.
And that, interestingly, there have been no statements from eBay as far as I've seen or anything about that relationship. I don't know that they would actually care, because it's not like there's a competing platform you can go to and they can just keep using CGC, but I kind of expected something like that. And I'm a little surprised not to have seen it, considering I think it was last year eBay said their number 3 segment or number 1 segment was like collectible cards. Mm-hmm. So it's a huge part of their ecosystem as well. And that's another example of how CGC kind of got into another ecosystem.
Yep.
And I'm really interested to see what's going to shake out, especially because, CGC had started gaining, they've only been in sports cards for about 2-3 years now. And they'd never really been taken seriously, and now they never will be. But in Pokemon, they'd been getting big, and now, well, this is specifically Pokemon, so you may lose a large segment of that market.
Yeah.
And it'll be interesting because you would think CGC would lose ground, but PSA just increased prices and extended wait times. So all of this happening around the same time is going to make for a very interesting shakeout as far as those companies go. But I can't believe, they'd gotten to the point where they had legitimacy, not just in comics, because that's always been their thing, like we said. But it started getting it in the TCG space. And, there's room in the video game space for a third grader, probably, if they ever wanted to get there. And this may have a big impact on that.
Yeah.
And I think it may impact the graded market in general.
Yeah.
But
there are a lot of other collectibles that come in boxes that can be graded. So you mentioned video games. I think ATA does action figures and things like that. So there's, again, opportunity there. I honestly thought that CGC stood for something like a comic grading company because that's what I've known them to be doing.
Yep.
So when you look at their relationship with eBay and why nothing was done there, one, we've known for a while that the eBay platform itself is very hands off when it comes to fakes, and they just kind of let the community take care of that themselves, and then eventually eBay will get rid of those accounts in time. But if they're going to serve product graded through CGC, be it comics or cards, now they have to find another vendor that does that, and I don't know of another vendor that does comics and cards as well. So this is just the evil that you know, I guess, if you want to look at it that way. I know people like CGC because the slabs are clean, that they're really nice compared to others. Basically, BGS and PSA kind of had to step up their game when it came to the labels that are put on slabs. And CGC also redid their grading systems a little bit to kind of align better to trading cards and what other people in the space have been grading. That in and of itself was a little bit of a controversy because 9.5s effectively became 10s. So you could resubmit for 10s. So people were able to wash 9.5s off eBay back through CGC for 10s, right? So that was a little bit of an issue. And it's just kind of like one thing after another, and how far now do you want to trust this company? And like kind of bringing the conversation to a head, I guess, for me, when it comes to grading, I came from sports cards. So BGS is Beckett. For those that remember what a magazine was, every month they would just put out a magazine with prices for every cards, sourced by calling some of the largest vendors and stores in the United States or North America, and effectively putting together this aggregate medium for people to utilize. Eventually, they moved into grading cards, so that name carries a lot of weight and has a lot of premium on it. PSA, another one that moved into this space and started doing things extremely well and extremely quickly. They provided also, I think, the first grading for non-sports cards. I don't think anybody was grading BGS like Magic for a long time. I think a lot of the original slabs we saw for Magic were PSA slabs.
Yeah.
And then CGCs formed in 2000, I think. Right? Yeah, in 2000.
Yeah, 2000.
And eventually they move into out of comics and into trading cards. They're kind of the new kid on the block, but that's because like SGC and some other organizations that also graded sports cards didn't want to move in. They didn't want to challenge. They wanted to stick with what they knew. And CGC kind of took a running start at that and, swung for the fences, and they did really, really well for a couple of years. And then yeah. And if they had kept it up, if they didn't push, if they didn't want to become part of somebody else's ecosystem, if they didn't want to become the de facto, they didn't want to become a monopoly in the space by gobbling up other entities, they wouldn't have had to actually move through something like this as quickly as they did, and basically just laughed at when it was found that these cards were fake, because it was by, like you said, no fantastic means. It was just
reading the dot matrix.
Yep.
The best part was so we have links to these articles and sources as well. Some of the forums, they posted the auction listings in some of these, and they're literally holding a card with an industrial printer in the background.
Yes, I heard about that too. Yeah.
These were not sophisticated fakes, and they were found through not sophisticated means.
Yeah, it's basically people who understood what Xerox dots were. There's some shorthand in there for parlance for people in the industry, and it's very clear that once you start seeing what Xerox dot of this specific printer look like, that they are exactly what is on these cards. Yep. It's like, how did you guys not recognize that at all? Like, what did you actually do to authenticate these cards were even as old as they were purported to be? And as mentioned up top, the article that was posted about this, where CGC cited working with an original developer on the game to lend credence to this find, is gone. It has been missing. Their response to this is lacking overall. And so for me, at the end of the day, this just makes me even more leery of CGC. Like, I don't really deal with slabbed cards of any of any sort. I'm more of a memorabilia person. I'd rather have that kind of stuff authenticated, graded, and slabbed. Like action figures as well, because those are a lot harder to actually fake. And now I wonder, and now I worry. I don't know what to look for anymore on a Pokemon card to verify if it's real or authentic. So I'll probably never engage with slabbed product like this without forearming myself. But when it comes to Magic cards, I know what to look for, and I would spend a lot of time re-authenticating a CGC slab if it crossed my desk for whatever reason.
Yeah.
What about you?
So coming from the sports side, obviously this does not look good. It's not a company that I would trust to grade cards. That said, I'm still trying to build out the Max series one issue at a time in CGC 9.6 or above.
Yep.
I still trust them for comics.
Yes.
That's what they're known for. That's what they do. There was a similar scandal in Pokemon, incidentally, a couple years ago, where BBCE, the baseball card exchange system, where they certify old boxes of wax as sealed, certified a box of Pokemon. First edition base set for Logan Paul. And it was G.I. Joe cards in there. There were no Pokemon. They're still used in the sports card world because people have known them for years. They trust, they respect what they know. I have not ever willfully touched a CGC slab of Magic, an SGC slab of Magic. It's only been PSA or BGS. And that's something that I think I would probably always stick with because, again, yes, they've graded fakes. They're more known and established in that space. And I understand when you're first getting into a new space, you're going to make mistakes. But this is a catastrophically huge mistake to make.
Yep.
And, you know, we turn down CGC Pokemon slabs now. Or we buy them as raw because we just don't want to risk it. We can't risk it. And there's been a number of vendors and even the collecticons that I've been doing that have started refusing to touch CGC because of this. And it's definitely going to have an impact there, but I would never touch them for cards, just comics. I don't think it'll impact comics at all.
Yep. Same.
But
the graded comics that I have are CGC graded. Whenever there's a cover that I want, I will find the auction that will basically guarantee CGC grading at 9.5, 9.6, 9.8, whatever it is, and take that auction because I trust them for that. But like you said, I wouldn't trust them now for anything else that isn't this. There is a little bit of tea, and it's very difficult to dig up, but it is referenced a number of times that PSA was offered this sheet, and they passed on it.
Yep.
They knew something was wrong with the sheet, and they passed on it. And so it ended at CGC. And as a company that's still trying to make a name for themselves and wiggle in to more market share, they took it on. And there was a lot of tit for tat. Every time something came out and CGC put out a response to this, PSA put up like effectively something snarky on their website. At one point in time, what is it? They think they said our slabs are authentic or something like that, or our cards are authentic.
Like that.
Yeah, that kind of leans into the idea that PSA actually saw this sheet first and no thank you'd that person.
Yeah.
So true or not, like that. It still comes down to who do you trust for this object. And not to say that you shouldn't trust the new company that's coming up and do this, because again, it's all humans. And unless you actually know who's working there, it's difficult to say that like a new company isn't going to be good. They could have hired people from another organization to start up. That is oftentimes how you get your first seniors and leads in spaces is you hire from other organizations.
And that actually has happened specifically in the grading industry. When we saw the proliferation of new grading companies over COVID, there were a number of them that poached people from PSA, SGC, and BGS to kind of start up. So that's even a known thing. But it wasn't quite enough here. And I think that it, for me, sorry to interrupt, is, hey, you are your own best protector. in the industry. Make sure you do your research, you look out for yourself, because at the end of the day, like if you try to sell this to someone, ultimately it's you sold it. So that's where the face is on the interaction, and that's the important thing. So make sure that you protect yourself.
Yeah.
Is what my big takeaway was. Sorry.
No, absolutely not. I agree with that. And so that's what it's going to come down to is you have BGS and PSA who have been grading Magic cards and Pokemon cards for forever. And yes, they are fallible, but they are not organizations that are trying to grow or take over a space so rapidly that they are willing to do something like this.
Yep.
And now you have to weigh that into your decision about which direction do you want to go. Do I think this impacts CGC in the long term? I think so. I think it impacts individual submissions, but the wait times were already impacting individual submissions. So partnering with eBay and becoming part of the eBay vault kind of solves that issue overall. Yeah. And if they disappear from the individual submission space just to work with eBay, I think that's perfectly fine, and it serves that audience without issue, especially because it seems like a lot of times they're just grading for authentication. They're not actually grading for a number, which in the grand scheme of this episode is ironic that I feel that that's okay. But for all the fuck-ups the eBay vault has, like sending out scrublands instead of underground seas, they've never been fake.
No. That's one thing they've gotten right.
Yeah. So in that regard, I'm okay with it, and I agree with you that for comics gradings, I would still go to them because at least for that part of the house, I respect what they do.
Yeah.
And I haven't had any problems or have seen anybody with any major issues with that side of things. So I would continue to trust them, and I would kind of expect them to fade out of just trading cards in time. Like they were the hip new thing they did for us change, which I think is great. Agents of change in stagnant verticals and stagnant industries generally makes things better for the consumer. And so in that regard, I like that. We saw BGS and PSA change their labels because CGC's labels look better. We saw them change the way they listed authentic. Man, what was the episode we did? It was the authentic signature on the fake card.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. They said card was fake, but the auto was authentic. Yeah, it was the Pete Rose rookie.
Yeah, and that label was pretty misleading at the end of the day, and we saw the industry change over that. So like agents of change are fantastic. I just don't think this is what we're seeing here is an agent of change, but in a very negative light, and I wouldn't expect CGC to really kind of stand tall on grading in the long run. And so that's kind of where I am on this. I was already a little leery of CGC slabs for anything that wasn't Pokemon.
Yeah.
And I think I'm going to remain in that space as well.
Yeah.
I think I have there's one CGC slab I have, but it's kind of the thing where it's such a low impact Pokemon card that I'm going to trust that it's real until proven otherwise. And if it's fake, then I'm not out more than like $15.
Sure.
Exactly.
Great. Yeah. Like that's fine.
It just happened to come in a lot. I just needed like the last like 2 cards for this promo set. Yeah. And they were like, all right, I have the ones you need, but one of them's going to be slabbed. I'm like, all right, fine. I could crack the case if I want to. So they're all unslabbed, or I could just whatever. And that's it. But I would not go out of my way. I did watch somebody buy a couple grand's worth of slabs from my LGS on Saturday, like a foil Dark Charizard and some stuff like that. Like, that era stuff. And I think I don't actually know how we handle slabs. That is difficult. I know when we've brought in old Magic Sealed, we've had it authenticated individually. But I assume slabs are going to be the same, and then we'll put them out. So I'm hoping the due diligence was done and what that guy has is authentic, but I do hope. I don't know.
That's fair.
So that's kind of where I land with CGC. I know it was a kind of rambling way to get there to say, like, no mas for me, but...
Yeah. And I think that's kind of where the industry is, too. And I think that's okay.
Yep.
It's just something that, we kind of wanted to bring to light because it's known in the vendor circles and some of the high-end circles, but it wasn't necessarily a mass available information. It wasn't mainstream yet, so we decided to cover it for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And the more we find on this, the more we'll post. We haven't really brought this up in Discord. This one's just kind of floated behind the scenes because when the sheet was first picked up, I was just like, I thought everything looked moderately okay, but the more I looked at the playtest cards, the more different they looked. And then I realized that I was just wrong because apparently on one of the Urza Saga foil sheets, there's a Blastoise as well. Like when they were testing Urza Saga's foils, Watsy was also testing Blastoise, or the Pokemon foiling. So I was like, okay, I've got no idea. Yeah, I've got no idea.
There is a Magic Blastoise, and that was actually part of what kind of sold it, was that they knew what Magic Blastoise was, that this person may know what they're thinking about, and then went further with it, incidentally. Sorry.
So no, that's fine. So I was just like, I've got no idea what kind of generational features I should be looking for on this stuff.
Yeah.
But like some of this doesn't ring true to me as being realistic, but I also don't know enough. Like just like the literal alpha test cards.
Yeah.
Like I know they're out there, and I know people can verify them at a glance, but
yeah,
you're not,
I have no idea how.
Yeah, no grading company can do that. You just kind of see it, and you're like, yeah, that's it. You would have to have like literally like Garfield and the other 4 people that alpha tested with him sit down with BGS or PSA or CGC and literally like go through the little oak tag pieces of paper or whatever those things were printed on.
Like, that actually is one carve out for me that I will still trust CGC on, is alpha, beta, gamma test prints for Magic, because they worked with the misprint guy, Keith Chuck Taylor Adams, on Facebook. They worked with Tavis King. They worked with original play testers to verify those, literally the way you're describing.
Yeah.
And that's the one that I would still trust them on. Yeah.
No,
you just reminded me.
No, that's fair, and that makes sense. Like, there's the guy that collects its soul rings.
Yeah.
He has like every different soul ring they've ever tested, and like you find out that they actually kept trying to make soul ring all the way into like Ice Age. So there's a soul ring out there that costs like 2. It's just in this guy's collection. Somebody else has chaos orbs. Like
there's forests, like they're out there, and that's but they went to those extremes, and that's the only reason I'll trust them there.
Yeah, no, and that makes sense. They didn't just rush to try and get something done with one person that just gave him a seal of approval. I assume remotely, because he didn't own the sheet. They just found a guy. I was like, yeah, it looks good to me, bro, and no investigation when you're half a world away. So yeah, that makes sense too. Like when you know that they have done the due diligence to understand the product, then it makes absolute sense, which is why you and I are both okay getting graded comics from certified guarantee company, because they've done the due diligence to understand that market instead of running into that market. So to close it out, I think you and I are both skittish on CGC for
not outright out.
Yeah, for non-comics and maybe some like niche or pedantic things like the alpha, beta, gamma tests. And like, all in all, I do hope they survive long term, because they're working with eBay, so they've got to build back some of that favor that they've lost with at least the Pokemon community. Like they're on the outs there. But I don't want to see what is effectively a pillar of that market fall, because then you also have a lot of worthless slabs, and people spend a lot of money on
time.
Time on nothing. Have you ever seen a grading house fail before?
Not in like a catastrophic way. Like, oh, they lost all credibility and failed. There were a couple that I followed for a bit during the pandemic because I liked what they were doing uniquely in the space. One of them fell apart over a divorce. Not kidding. One of them just stopped, and I don't know why. But their site got taken down. They stopped taking submissions, and that was it. The other one that I will shout out that I'm kind of following now because I like their tech is tag grading. The slabs are completely clear. The label is like laser engraved on. But if you ever get a chance to check out their population report, you can see like they literally put on your card each level of scan that they do in the card in high res and point out all the flaws that they found when they were grading it, which boy should everyone do that.
Yeah, that's really helpful, because if you try to resubmit, they should be able to just ding the same things again and give you the same grade instead of that shuffle that people like to do, that wash through.
Yeah.
Tag is a name that I've heard here and there. I haven't seen any in person yet. Who knows? Maybe I will. In regards to the companies that fail, though, when a grading house fails, what happens to the power of their slabs? Is it lost? Okay.
Completely lost. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's people will value it at less than raw because they have to risk damaging the card by cracking the case. Yeah, it's not great.
Okay. That was just the last question I've had, because the weirdest slab I have is a singular SGC, and I'd never heard of that company ever in my life until like we really started digging in on grading. And so I was just curious, because I knew there couldn't have been just these 3 or 4 that were out there, that more have had to come and go. But because grading is still fairly new for trading cards, my understanding and view of that market is very narrow. And I wanted to make sure that, we got that information out there.
Before we sign off, and this will be it, I did just check gem rate. If it's any indication, yesterday PSA graded 62,000 cards, SGC graded 9.9 thousand, Beckett graded 1.1 thousand, CGC, although this does include comics, graded 15.3 thousand items. So I assume that's mostly comics.
Yeah.
But worth a mention that CGC used to be about 10 to 20% behind PSA, and they're at less than 30. Yeah. So they've definitely gone back.
All right. That is good to know. And like, this might be something we follow up on. It really just depends if anything else comes to light, or if anything happens with the CGC eBay relationship, etc. Or if somebody else builds a relationship with another entity, like we know, is it like Fanatics has
ESA, and PWCC is now Fanatics Live. Yeah.
And so it will, that kind of stuff will change the landscape. So we definitely will come back to revisit grading in the future. But for at MtG Cabalcast on Twitter, Facebook, Patreon, YouTube, and Blue Sky, I am at Halt. I am Reptar. You are
at Damon _Thurston.
We'll see you next week.